Good Monday morning, everyone. I'm Bongsup from Rhode Island, INBRE. I want to officially welcome you to our virtual Northeast Regional IDEA Conference. We call it v-NERIC 2021. A little history about NERIC. As you may know, there are 23 IDEA states and Puerto Rico, and they are grouped into 4 areas: West, Central, Southeast, and Northeast. We are the Northeast. There are 5 IDEA states: Delaware, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Rhode Island. And we gather every other year to present our research work and share ideas and network. All of us have been coping with COVID during the last year and a half. And our NERIC meeting is no exception. And this is our first virtual NERIC. The conventional wisdom is that in-person conference is always better for networking, personal interactions and collaborations, and so on. True, but we're finding out some unexpected advantages of virtual meeting. For example, we can attract more attendees because of easy access. This NERIC is a good example, which attracted well over 600 registrants. No registration fees are great to accommodate student trainees. In the past, trainee participation was severely limited in in-person meetings because of the expenses associated with registration and hotel accommodation. We have great programs for the next 3 days, 3 exciting keynotes. Today, Dr. Bonnie Graham, who was instrumental in developing the first mRNA-based vaccines, will talk about his pioneering vaccine work. And I think his mRNA work is one of the fascinating science stories of our time. Tomorrow, Charlie Enright will talk about citizen science and Salem, a fascinating topic which we look forward to. On Wednesday, Dr. Barango will speak about the latest on CRISPR gene editing technology. In addition, we have 8 concurrent science sessions on various biomedical topics throughout the conference, ranging from health and diseases, and environmental health sciences, entrepreneurship, and DEI. Lastly, on Tuesday afternoon, we have 3 hours of fast-moving 3-minute lightning talks from our 76 undergraduate, graduate, postdoctoral trainees from the 5 Northeast IDEA states. There are 6 lightning topics: technology, biology, cancer, neuro, psychology and health, and microbiology. We thank the National Association of IDEA Principal Investigators, known as NAPI, and the Northeast Biomedical Accelerator Hub, Driven, for providing best lightning talks. Awards. We'll be giving out these awards $500 each for undergraduate, graduate, and postdoctoral categories. You may feel the NERIC schedule that we have is quite packed, but I'm not sure if you are so ambitious to attend all the sessions. But I trust you will pick and choose on topics of your liking. The conference of this scale requires a lot of planning and coordination, meetings and resources. And I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge all the sponsors from the IDEA groups and commercial sources. In particular, I want to thank all of our NERIC Planning Committee members who had worked tirelessly for the last several months. Ed Harrod, Pam Swyatat at Rhode Island Advanced CTR and Brown University, and Rhode Island RI-INBRE Program Coordinator Brett Pallard of Providence College, Program Assistant Laura Erigi, Business Manager Laura Bellabia, Bioinformatics Director Chris Hemme, all from the University of Rhode Island. Thank you. Just a couple of programming notes. I think our conference portal is very easy to navigate and straightforward. There are 4 tabs in the portal. The welcome page lists all NERIC sponsors. The agenda page, which is an important one, is organized with conference days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Just click the blue join button for the session that you want to attend and provide your name and email info. And that's it. Very simple. Some sessions will be live streamed, like this one, while others will occur in Zoom. To ask your question, type yours into the Ask Your Question box on the right side of your screen. We will relay your questions to the speakers during Q&A after the talk. For Zoom sessions, which is the case for all the concurrent science and breakout sessions, enter your questions in the chat box as you normally would do in Zoom. We also have a tab that lists all the lightning talk abstracts. So please check them out before Tuesday's lightning talk sessions. Lastly, we have a resource page that lists all the Northeast Regional IDEA programs and their associated cores. This document is very informative. We invite you to visit this program websites to explore the rich diversity of research projects and facilities supporting new ideas and new discoveries in the Northeast. Thank you very much. Again, welcome to NERIC 2021. Now, it's a great pleasure to introduce the University of Rhode Island Provost, Don DeHayes. Provost DeHayes came to URI in 2007 from the University of Vermont, and he has been a driving force for URI's recent rise in research capacity and academic excellence. He is responsible for transforming URI into a vibrant, student-based, learning-centered research university. Also, Don was instrumental in URI's launching of Academic Health Collaborative, AHC, to spur cooperation, innovation, research, interprofessional education, and population health. That positions URI as a health reform leader. And naturally, Don has been a strong supporter of our INBRE program and values faculty support, student training, collaboration, and networking with other IDEA programs in the state. In October, Don is stepping down from his post after 14 years of truly outstanding service and dedication. And no doubt he will leave an indelible mark on URI and will miss his great and caring leadership. And it has been such a privilege and pleasure working with Don, who really understands research and the importance of capacity building and advocating student training. I just want to say, Don is the friendliest academic leader I ever met. That, I think, is an important leadership quality. And I'm grateful that as a longtime INBRE supporter, he can deliver welcome remarks for our meeting. Good morning, Don.
Good morning, Bongsup, and thank you so much for those kind words for everyone out there in the audience, I think there's some 640 or 50 of you. Usually when Bongsup starts with those kind words, it's followed by an ask for money. So this is great. I've got all these witnesses that he hasn't made an ask yet today. So good morning, everyone. On behalf of President Mark Parlange, our new president at URI, who arrived just 2 weeks ago, and also on behalf of the faculty, staff, and students of our university, welcome to the Northeast Regional IDEA Conference. We are very, very pleased, both at Rhode Island-INBRE and at the university, to be hosting this. While you have an impressive agenda for this meeting with amazing speakers, I do want to take a moment to welcome specially and also extend my gratitude and that of our university to Dr. Graham for his leadership and extraordinary efforts in developing the mRNA-based coronavirus vaccine. Your hard work and creativity and innovation really has saved the nation in many ways, and we're grateful and honored that you are part of this program. I also want to take a moment to thank Bongsup Cho, a friend and a colleague and the leader of Rhode Island-INBRE, and also the entire planning committee, our colleagues from Providence College and Brown, for your efforts in organizing this meeting. As Bongsup mentioned, this is a highly accessible and very, very straightforward portal for accessing the conference. The easier it is to access, the more planning and challenge went into organizing it to make it that way. And so I really am grateful for our colleagues who put the time and effort into planning this over the past several months. As you all know better than I, the IDEA network of biomedical research excellence is designed to build research capacity. Obviously, that includes human capacity, such as cultivating junior investigators and of course, training students for careers in biomedical sciences. I'm particularly pleased that you reached out to include students, both graduate and undergraduate students, in this meeting. I think it's a great opportunity for them to share their work, to gain confidence, and to prepare for a career in biomedical science. Obviously, INBRE also supports and provides access to instrumentation and facilities. You are all very much aware of that. But what I'm taking with is that if there was ever a time to see the wisdom of that investment in building research capacity in our country, it is now. So if at no other time, if folks were scratching their head about should we make this investment, I think that the value of that investment is right in front of us as we gather at this conference today and through the experience we've all lived through in the last year and a half or more. This is an investment that is paying dividends not only in building science for the future, but also directly in saving lives and improving the quality of lives of so many, and also allowing us to rebuild our economy and build a science infrastructure and capacity for the future. So I thank the NIH and the federal government for this investment and know that it will continue out into the future. We've learned wonderful, wonderful lessons about how these investments pay off. I'm particularly pleased that some 650 of you have chosen to carve out some time today and over the next few days to share what you've learned and what you're discovering and the work that you are doing. I think if another lesson perhaps that we are learning is top flight science is necessary, even essential. Sometimes that can be forgotten on a day-to-day basis until a major crisis, whether it's a pandemic or climate change or other extraordinary complex challenges that face our nation and the world. But I think we're also learning that good science, if you will, is not only necessary, but on its own is not sufficient. We need to spend more and better time translating and communicating that science to each other, as you will be doing over the next few days, but also to the public and to our policymakers. I noted on your agenda that you have a session that relates to citizen science, which is sort of a new and emerging concept, I think. I just read an article a day or two ago about community science that is about bringing complex science to the public so they have a chance to participate, they have a chance to learn from it, and they have a chance to help shape how that science gets translated and converted into policy. So I'm pleased that you have a very forward-looking agenda, not only talking about your discoveries of the day today, but talking about how we can be better at pulling our society together to understand and believe in the science that you all are doing. Let me just end. I made reference to policymakers a moment ago, and I just want to share that we in this little state of Rhode Island are very, very fortunate. Our policymakers, that is our congressional delegation, led by Senator Jack Reed, the senior senator from Rhode Island, they get it. They understand the importance of science as it relates to human health, to climate change, to the economy, etc. We are very fortunate that Senator Reed is not only a leader in the state of Rhode Island, but nationally and across the globe. So, Senator, if you're listening, thank you for your leadership and for all you do to position the state of Rhode Island and the University of Rhode Island for a vibrant future. And to all of you in the audience today, thank you for participating in this wonderful and deeply rich conference. And thank you also for the science that you are performing every day. Best wishes to all of you for a great conference. Back to you, Bongsup.
Well, thank you for your remarks, Don. I really appreciate it. Now it's my honor to introduce Senator Jack Reed. The senator was elected in 1996 as Rhode Island's 46th U.S. Senator. I should note that he's one of the few West Point graduates serving in the United States Senate. For over 25 years, he has been a champion for middle-class families and firm believer that all Americans should have the opportunity to build a better life. As a senior member of the powerful Appropriation Committee, Senator Reed has been a relentless advocate for our state, including infrastructure funding, training, and education. We're particularly grateful for his continued support and encouragement for the state's IDEA program. Senator Reed is unable to join us live today, but here are the prepared welcome remarks in a video.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rhode Island IDEA Network of Biomedical Research Excellence Conference. I would like to thank Dr. Sho for his continued leadership in ensuring Rhode Island is well positioned to help lead research breakthroughs and train tomorrow's biomedical workforce right here in our own state. I'd also like to thank all of the professors, students, and support staff who are involved with the RI-INBRE and cultivating the next generation of researchers in our state. I was pleased to be able to join many of you in 2019 to celebrate the renewal of the RI-INBRE, which meant $20 million in federal research funding to continue this important work over 5 years. That grant brought the total amount of funding for RI's-INBRE program from the National Institutes of Health to over $80 million since 2001. This funding has been critical for bringing resources for biomedical research to our state and ensuring we have the workforce to continue these efforts for years to come. In fact, this funding has supported 212 faculty positions across 7 institutions in the state and has trained nearly 2,000 students. More than 70% of the undergrads trained here have gone on to hold biomedical jobs in New England. NIH research funding advances our understanding of life-threatening and debilitating diseases and provides hope for new treatments, cures, and diagnostics, all the while strengthening our economy and maintaining our competitive edge in biomedical innovation. That's why I have supported increased funding for the NIH over the course of my tenure in the Senate. Serving on the Appropriations Subcommittee charged with funding the NIH and other health agencies, we were able to fund the NIH at over $42.9 billion in fiscal year 2021, an increase of nearly $13 billion over the last 5 years. The Institutional Development Award Program goes one step further and provides grants to research entities in states that historically have low success ratings in securing NIH funding. Such funding has proven to be a boon in Rhode Island, boosting our research funding and working just as intended to strengthen our biomedical research infrastructure and train young and talented students to be the next generation of skilled researchers in our state. Again, thank you to Dr. Sho for his work, and I look forward to seeing what advances and discoveries our researchers will make over the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Reed. I really appreciate it. And looks like we have several minutes before Dr. John Lorsch's talk. So we'll be back shortly at 9:30 for his talk. Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's my distinct honor to introduce Dr. John Lorsch, the director of the National Institute of General Medical Sciences, NIGMS. Dr. Lorsch has been in the position since 2013, overseeing the Institute's $3 billion budget, which supports over 3,000 investigators and 5,000 research grants, including IDEA programs. He received a PhD from Harvard University and conducted postdoctoral work at Stanford University, both in biochemistry. I found an interview back in 2013 when Dr. Lorsch was asked what motivated him to join NIGMS as a director. He answered, quote, "While at Johns Hopkins, I noticed that by serving in leadership roles, one could have a huge and positive impact on many people, rather than I could just focusing on my lab research. And I decided to helping steer the scientific ship is the most important way I can spend my time," unquote. I think that's exactly what John is doing for the past 8 years as the NIGMS director. Under his leadership, the Institute has fulfilled the championing role of supporting basic research in the life sciences. We're particularly grateful for his outstanding leadership in biomedical research, capacity building, education, and training. He's going to give us an update from NIGMS, but audience, we will have a Q&A after his talk, so please add your questions in the space on the right side of your screen. My colleague, Brett Pollack, will relay your question to the speaker. Welcome, John.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the invitation to come. And thank you to the Rhode Island INBRE for making this meeting possible. It's great to be able to speak to all of you. I wanted to give you just some overview of some of the things that are happening and have been happening over the past year or so at NIGMS. Of course, not an exhaustive list. I'd be happy to discuss other things that are happening during the Q&A if there are particular areas you're interested in that aren't covered. Let me start with the sort of elephant in the room, which of course is COVID. NIGMS very early on in the COVID situation recognized the need for additional research in the area, and we actually were one of the first institutes to have a urgent competitive revision notice out, such that researchers in certain areas with NIGMS grants could apply for additional funds to allow them to pivot to doing research on COVID-19. And the particular areas that we've been supporting are research on modeling and forecasting of the spread of SARS-CoV-2 and the effects of possible intervention strategies on that spread, and also repurposing diagnostic or therapeutics that are currently under development by small businesses for use against COVID-19. To date, we've made 32 awards to 26 distinct projects with this supplements program, with an investment of nearly $10 million. And 5 awards have gone to idea state institutions for a total of $2.2 million. So that's actually quite good. Over 20% of the funds we've dispersed in this program went to idea states. So we're quite pleased about how you did in that regard. We've had some additional supplement programs that were specific for idea states and idea programs, and 2 particular ones were urgent competitive revisions to idea program grants and also to the Native American Research Centers for Health, or NARCH grants, to do SARS-CoV-2 surveillance studies, particularly sequencing of variants and understanding how the variants are spreading and evolving in idea states and Native American regions. We have given 21 awards for almost $15 million, so that's quite a substantial investment, and we hope that's going to provide some very important information regarding the evolution and spread of the virus. We also had a supplement program for IDEA and NARCH grants to address, to do research to address SARS-CoV-2 vaccine hesitancy, to try to tackle this really important issue of what is it that drives people not to want to get vaccinated, and how can we help convince them that the vaccine is quite important for their health and the health of others. We've made 7 awards in this program for a total of about $2 million. So we're hoping to get some important information and insights from those supplements. We also recognize the need for access to data related to COVID-19 in terms of patients, individual patients, and their health and progression, particularly from rural and underserved regions of the country. And so we partnered with the National Center for Advancing Translational Science, NCATS, which had stood up something called N3C, the National Repository for COVID-19 Clinical Data. They've been using a federated model such that electronic health records from a wide variety of different systems can be harmonized using artificial intelligence and machine learning and natural language processing approaches. They encourage collaboration amongst the sites that are providing data. So their sites are primarily the CTSAs, and they provide data science help to researchers to actually use the data in N3C. So we provided a supplement to 8 IDEA CTRs, Clinical and Translational Research Centers, led by West Virginia, which stood up a COVID-19 registry for IDEA states that became a very important component of N3C. And they're providing electronic health-based data hub for COVID-19 research. We're now expanding this to include viral genome data as well as clinical imaging data, which will become part of the system. And several more CTRs are also being added now in the second round. And as I mentioned, this project has ensured that there's inclusion of data from patients in rural and underserved populations in IDEA regions in the N3C project. And so far, this has been quite successful, and quite a number of researchers in IDEA states have been using the data. This next slide shows you the data that's going into N3C, just a summary of it. There are 56 sites in total contributing data, so far over 6.5 million individual patients' records have been contributed. Over 2 million COVID positive cases, a total of over 7 billion rows of data. So that's really a lot of data, and almost 600 million clinical observations, 3.5 billion test results, over 1 billion medication records, almost 345 million procedures, and over 320 million visits to clinics and physicians. And the breakdown of the demographics you can see on the right. So again, this has been so far, I think, a very successful project. We encourage you to look into making use of the data. If you are doing data science or electronic health-based research or have questions that could be answered using a data portal such as this. And as I mentioned, there is help available for being able to use the data and get you started. One of the things that this has made us wonder is, can we build on this CTR-CTSA partnership moving forward past COVID-19? So there's a huge need for better ways to harmonize and share and use electronic health record data and other data for clinical research. And this N3C model, we're hoping, might serve as a starting point in the future for building something that goes beyond just COVID-19 and takes on additional diseases and health-related information. And so that's something we'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on, how this might be done, how you might utilize it if it were set up, and what the opportunities and also the challenges are for making such a system. Another area of great concern, of course, is long COVID or post-acute sequelae of COVID-19 or PASC. And NIH set up a study called the PASC study to look at the long-term effects of COVID-19 disease. The IDEA CTRs took a leading position in trying to get some of this research funding to do work in IDEA states. And they actually expanded on the IDEA registry that I just mentioned for N3C to form something called I-SCORE, which is the IDEA States Consortium for Clinical Research. A number of the CTRs partnered. They put in an application. They were actually selected for funding as part of the PASC Adult Clinical Recovery Cohort. And those sites are shown on this model, on this slide here on the map. The Delaware CTR independently is participating in a pediatric cohort, and the Rhode Island CTR is participating via Massachusetts collaboration. So I think this is very important. It's a major contribution from the IDEA states to understanding the long-term effects of COVID-19, and also is a really nice model in collaboration in clinical research amongst IDEA states, and one I think should be leveraged moving forward to try to develop some of these national clinical research capacities. Now, another ongoing project related to COVID-19 is the so-called RADx-UP program. This is the program looking at studies of testing in underserved populations. That's what UP stands for. And unfortunately, my slides seem to have gotten a little bit disjointed here. Those red dots were supposed to show you funded sites in IDEA states. But so far, 31 states have been funded through the RADx-UP. And I should mention Ming Lei is one of the managers of this program at NIH. 31 states, in addition to DC and Puerto Rico, have been funded, which include 54 institutions. And the distribution on the right shows you how the funding has been broken up according to grants that were supported by different ICs. And NIGMS has done quite well in this regard. And as you can see, if the dots were in the right place, quite a number of IDEA states have gotten RADx-UP grants. And the awards that went specifically to IDEA grants, and several other IDEA state grantees were funded but not through IDEA grants, are shown here. And you can see in the eastern region, Delaware State received a grant, as did Brown University in Rhode Island. So the IDEA states are well represented in the RADx-UP program. Another important area was the participation of IDEA states in large clinical trials, national clinical trials of therapeutics, vaccines, and other interventions to try to reduce morbidity and mortality from COVID-19. And the big one that the NIH has supported was called the ACTIVE trials, which were a partnership between NIH, a number of pharmaceutical companies, several other funding agencies, and other organizations. And we saw an opportunity to try to help IDEA institutions through their CTRs to get involved in these trials. And we actually brokered, in a number of cases, communication and discussions between the Foundation for the National Institutes of Health, which was the sort of body that was coordinating this ACTIVE program, and IDEA state CTRs. And you can see the IDEA states that participated in the trials are shown here. There are a number of different active trials which are targeting different things like immune modulators, monoclonal antibodies, antithrombotics, as well as other experimental therapeutics. Some states were already involved in some of these trials, but we were able to get a number of other states' CTRs involved, and the ones that are in parentheses are ones that we help facilitate. So, for example, West Virginia at this point is participating in all the trials, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, etc. So this, in many ways, was a big success, and IDEA states are now reasonably well represented in these large national trials. There were some lessons learned, however, from our trying to do this. So one thing we learned, which probably not a surprise, is that there's a very large heterogeneity in IDEA states' abilities to support large national clinical trials. Some were right there, some were already doing it when we got in and tried to help. Others really were not able to do it because they simply didn't have the capacity. So as I just mentioned, some said they didn't have the capacity to do major clinical trials at all. Others said they could join in principle, but they couldn't because they were already conducting other clinical trials or involved in other clinical trials, and they didn't have any additional capacity to get involved in these active trials. And so, this did lead us to wonder about coordination in terms of joining large national trials, particularly in a time of a crisis like a pandemic. Were the trials that the institutions had already started or had already joined as valuable to science and to their own states' patient populations as joining the active trials would have been? So that's a question that we are thinking about and trying to understand and address. So that's just an overview of some of what we've been doing related to COVID-19. I'll now pivot to talk about some other issues. The first is cloud computing, which is an area that we think has a great deal of potential for the IDEA states and IDEA state institutions and other under-resourced institutions throughout the country, such as minority-serving institutions. One of the appeals of the cloud is that it can help democratize high-performance computing and research such as data science research, such as artificial intelligence research. This is because the NIH certainly cannot afford to buy every institution its own high-performance computers, and nor can many institutions or most institutions really afford to buy and maintain and continually upgrade high-performance computing platforms. The cloud, however, in principle, allows any institution and any faculty member or student at any institution to use high-performance computers and to do cutting-edge data science research, such as artificial intelligence, without having to have on-site or on-premises high-performance computers of their own. NIH has worked out a partnership with some of the big cloud providers, at the moment Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, to provide discounted cloud services and training. So the cloud services include storage, compute, and also training in how to use and how to operate in the cloud environment. So one thing we're interested in hearing from you is, what are the IDEA state needs, the opportunities, and the challenges in terms of cloud computing for data science and other kinds of computational research? And we have a couple of ways that you can give us this feedback. We have a request for information out right now, which is seeking input on current and future needs and utilization of cloud computing from IDEA institutions, and as well as RCMIs, which is funded by the National Institute of Minority Health and Health Disparities and other minority-serving institutions. It was released last month. It doesn't close till September 30th, so you still have plenty of time either as an individual or as an institution, to respond to the RFI and give your input on where you see the opportunities and challenges for cloud computing in idea states. We also have an upcoming workshop that's open to anyone who's interested on broadening cloud computing usage in biomedical research. That's going to be September 13th and 14th. The website is actually now open, and Lakshmi can give you, or Krishan, or Ming, or others at NIGMS could give you information about how to register. Registration is free and open to anyone. There will be breakout sessions during the meeting to kind of get individual input. And the participants in those breakout sessions will be selected from the people who register to attend the meeting. So do sign up to register, to attend the meeting, and you may be selected to give additional input through the breakout sessions. We also have been giving opportunity to participants in the INBRE programs, as well as other NIGMS programs, particularly our diversity development programs, to get free training in cloud computing, either from Amazon or from Google. Those are trainings that are happening at 3 different levels, beginner through advanced, and at least half of them are going to be at the beginner level. So that's very appropriate to people who really don't know much about cloud computing at all, whether you be a student or a faculty member or something else. There'll be 15 to 17 seats per day for these classes, and there'll be 500 total seats. There were 2 training sessions in June with 32 participants. There are 6 that are ongoing with 100 participants. This month, there are going to be 200 more, and there'll be 11 more sessions scheduled for the fall. So again, about 500 participants total. So far, 90 institutions have signed up, so we're getting a really good response. Again, if you're interested, contact Lakshmi. His email is shown here, and he can tell you how to apply to participate again in this. Again, free, open to anyone in an INBRE program. So now let me move on to just more general NIGMS programs that may be of interest to those of you in idea state institutions. The first is one called Maximizing Opportunities for Scientific and Academic Independent Careers, or MOSAIC. MOSAIC is a program designed to help diversify the faculty ranks in research-intensive institutions. It has 2 parts. The first part is a postdoctoral career transition award to promote diversity. It's a K99 R00. The second part is an institutionally focused research education cooperative agreement to promote diversity, and that's through the UE5 activity code. So what that UE5 does is we're giving awards to scientific societies, and they're going to serve as nucleating and mentoring centers for the K99 and R00 fellows. And we've given 3 awards so far, one to the American Society for Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, one to the American Society for Cell Biology, and one for the Association of American Medical Colleges, AAMC. In addition, every round of the 3 rounds a year, we are taking applications for the K99R00 from applicants who would increase and promote the diversity of the biomedical research enterprise. And we've been giving awards every round to those individuals for K99s. And so what's going to happen is that as we give awards to the K99 fellows, they will be organized into cohorts according to their scientific areas, and each of those cohorts assigned to one of the professional societies will provide additional mentoring, career development activities, networking activities, skill building activities, etc. So for example, when the K99 fellows are applying for faculty positions, they will help them with that process, help them with the negotiation, give them advice. When they become faculty members, they will provide additional mentoring in grant writing, lab management, things of that nature. And we hope through that additional mentoring, additional career development activities will promote the successful transition of the K99 fellows to their own independent research labs. So if you have a postdoc who would contribute to the diversity of the biomedical research enterprise, please encourage her or him to apply to the program. If you yourself are a postdoc in that category, please consider applying. At the moment, almost every NIH institute and center is participating in Mosaic, so you don't have to be doing research related just to NIGMS's mission. Almost anything you're doing related to NIH's mission will fall into Mosaic. So please consider applying. If you have any questions, contact Kenny Gibbs, who is the managing director of the program at NIGMS. Another new program that I wanted to mention to you is the SURE program, Support for Research Excellence. This is the descendant of the SCORE program, which some of you may have heard of, which we did an evaluation of a couple of years ago and made some very significant changes to based on that evaluation. The purpose of SURE is to develop and sustain research excellence of faculty at under-resourced institutions that have a historic mission of serving underrepresented and socioeconomically disadvantaged students. There are 3 parts of the program. There's 2 research grant parts, the Support for Research Excellence, or SURE Award. This is an R16, so it's very similar, as you'll see in a second, to an R15 area grant, just targeting a different population of institutions. These are for investigators who have no other NIH research funding. So if you have an R1 or some other grant, you're not eligible for this. If you have an R15, you're not eligible. But if you don't, you're eligible to apply if you're at one of the eligible institutions. It's for $100,000 direct cost a year. It's for 4 years, and it's renewable. So you can maintain your research program at this sort of institution with this grant. There's also a companion grant, which is a first independent research award, SURE First, very similar to the SURE award, but it's for investigators who have never had prior NIH research funding. It's for $125,000 direct costs per year for 4 years. So it's a little bit more just so that they can get their lab off the ground, buy equipment, things like that. There's a mentored component, so they need to have a mentor to help them, get their lab up and running. And it's not renewable. The idea is that they would transition from this to either the SURE award or to some other kind of funding. And then we're going to have a resource center for support for research excellence SURE program. This is going to be to build administrative infrastructure at the SURE institutions, thus broadening participation amongst the SURE institutions in the program. And that's going to be for $750,000 a year direct costs, and it'll be a 5-year award. Now, a little more details. So the R16s are going to replace the SCORE awards that we previously gave in the SCORE program. Their focus is on supporting research excellence in these eligible institutions, and many INBRE institutions are eligible. So that's one of the reasons I'm pointing this out to you. They require participation of students in the funded research, which is a difference from the SCORE award. So like the R15s, it's funding for faculty to do research, but where they focus on helping students get research experience, real cutting edge research experience. The applicant institutions have to have a strategic plan for developing their research capacity and culture. So again, we're trying to build culture and capacity for research at these institutions with a focus on the students, again, being able to do research. There are publicly available data that are used to determine eligibility. So there's a cutoff of how much NIH research project grant funding the institution can have a year and be eligible at $6 million a year total cost. Institutions have to either enroll more than 25% undergrads who are supported through Pell Grants, or they have to be medical or health professional schools that were founded to educate students from nationally underrepresented backgrounds. And as I mentioned, there's the U24 Resource Center. That's going to help build or strengthen offices of sponsored programs through seed grants and through consulting and advice. That's to allow them to apply more easily to the program. We also will be providing administrative training by the center staff and regional outreach coordinators, again, to build these kinds of administrative functions at institutions. And they'll also serve to track institutions' progress in research capacity building, as well as the efficacy of the center itself. And then the last program I want to tell you about is our MIRA program. Hopefully, many of you have heard of it. This is a new paradigm for funding fundamental biomedical research that NIGMS has been first piloting and is now really transitioning to. It's a single grant per PI to support their research program. Once you have that grant, you can't have other NIGMS research grants with a few exceptions. It's much more flexible and hopefully sustainable than R01s and other research grants. This plot shows since the inception of the award how the program has grown. The hashed blue lines show the number of R01s NIGMS gave each year from 2015. The solid orange bars are the MIRAs, and the black dots with the lines are the percentage of this pool of grants, R01 equivalents, that were made up by MIRAs each year from 2015 to 2020. Now, we started giving the awards in 2016, and you can see that every year this has steadily grown, such that in 2020, it made up a third of that portfolio. This year, it's grown to about 40% of the portfolio, and one of our strategic plan goals is to grow this over the next 5 years to be about 2/3 of that portfolio. So major growth in MIRA, and this really is the major funding mechanism we intend to be using to support NIGMS-funded investigator-initiated research. It's been particularly popular with early-stage investigators. This shows the growth in the percentage of NIGMS-funded early-stage investigators funded each year who received either an R01 in black, or a MIRA, which is the blue-gray, or a DP2, which is the light gray. And you can see that in 2020, the vast majority of early-stage investigators that we funded that year were funded through the MIRA program. And so, again, that's the direction we're heading. If you are doing research that's related to NIGMS, and you either have an NIGMS R01 already, you can apply to the MIRA program when it comes up time for renewal. If you're an early stage investigator working in an area within NIGMS's mission, I strongly encourage you to apply to the MIRA program. Success rates for the past few years have been over 40% for early stage investigators, so you're not going to find much else like that at NIH for you. So really, again, if you're working in NIGMS's mission areas and you're an early stage investigator, please apply to the MIRA program and contact a program director if you want more information. Now, the last two things I want to say are just thoughts related to the IDEA program and how we might optimize its functioning. The first is, as I look, and Ming and I look broadly at the COBRE grants that have been awarded over the last few years, we're a little concerned that they're becoming too narrowly focused on very defined scientific areas, and that they're not broad enough. And remember that the COBREs are intended to be capacity building grants, particularly focused on early career investigators and developing bigger populations of independent investigators within your institutions. So we encourage you, whether you're a PI, whether you're a leader at your institution, in thinking about COBREs that you want to submit, think broadly. Think broad areas that you could really build capacity in, rather than very narrowly tailored areas. We think a broadly focused COBRE has a number of advantages. First, it's going to be a lot more effective for you to build research capacity if you have a broad area. If you have a very narrow, tailored area, the joke at NIH about narrowly focused grants is, a grant on the left kidney as opposed to the right kidney. But if you have a very narrowly tailored grant for your COBRE, it's very unlikely your institution is going to already have or be able to hire enough faculty to support the pilot projects and the research projects within that COBRE and to be supported by those projects. Whereas a broad area, I'm going to just give an example, data science is a very broad area. If you had a COBRE in data science, your institution is much more likely to be interested in hiring sufficient new faculty in that area as a strategic goal than if it's a very, very narrowly tailored area. There'll be a bigger pool of compelling candidates for the research project leaders. That's the point I just made, which is going to make your program more sustainable in the long run and in a stronger position to renew. I think it's going to have a broader appeal to students and postdocs who want to work within the COBRE if it's a broader area and thus more things going on. And there's going to be a stronger rationale for your securing institutional support from your chairs and your deans in a broad area that's going to align probably more easily with strategic goals for the institution than a very narrowly tailored area. So please give that some consideration when you're thinking about COBREs. And then related to that, we have a little bit of concern about what the pipeline for biomedical R&D looks like in some idea states. And this is sort of an idealized version of that pipeline where questions, ideas, curiosity drives basic research. That then eventually leads to something which can be translated through the translational research process to something which can be applied and then tested for that application in clinical research. And the other end of that pipeline, then new therapeutics, vaccines, devices, methodologies to improve human health emerge. Again, when we look at the portfolio and the idea states, our impression is that it looks a little more like this, where over the years, translational research has become a bigger and bigger component of the pie, basically, or the pipeline, which has led to this picture that sort of looks like an anaconda that just swallowed an elephant, where the basic side and the clinical research side are maybe small in comparison to that translational piece. And translational piece research is obviously very important, but if you don't have sufficient basic research going on in your states, you're not going to have much to translate, or you're going to have to rely on basic science that's coming from the coasts, and you won't have your own basic science to translate. Likewise, if you don't have a healthy and strong clinical research enterprise, it's going to be very hard for you to be the ones who will test what you're translating for actual efficacy in the clinics. And I think that would also be a shame. So we'd like to see a more balanced pipeline where the three parts are a little bit more in balance than it's our perception that they currently are. And with that, I'm happy to take questions if there's time.
There is absolutely time for questions, John, and we've gotten a whole bunch in the chat.
Terrific.
This is Brett Pellock from Rhode Island INBRE, and I've been monitoring the chat, and there's a whole bunch of great questions. And so I'm going to start relaying them to you, and hopefully we can get people's great questions answered. So a user named Tabitha has asked, what is the main difference between the R01 funding mechanism and MIRA?
That's a great question. So R01s are driven by specific aims, right? So if you write an R01, you have 2 or 3 or 4 specific aims. This is what I'm going to do over the next 4 or 5 years, laid out in a lot of detail. Like, here are the experiments I'm going to do, here are the controls I'm going to do. And one of the reasons we started MIRA was because we didn't feel that, broadly speaking, that reflected how fundamental investigator-initiated research really operated, at least at the best of times. You never know where your research is going to lead you. If you can tell me exactly what experiment you're going to be doing 3 years from now, I suggest that maybe you need to take on something a little more ambitious if you're in the basic science space. And so we wanted to give people a lot more freedom to follow their noses. And so the MIRA grant does not have specific aims. You write a very short general proposal about, okay, here is why the area of research I'm working on is important. Here are the general questions I'd hope to answer and why those questions are really important to answer. And here's why I'm the right person, I think, to try to answer those questions. So it's a high-level review without a lot of specific details about the experiments, and you're not held to doing exactly what you said, because we recognize that, you may do a control experiment one day and realize that, oh my goodness, this is leading off in a different direction. And through that, you may discover a whole new biological process that changes the face of science. And we don't want to prevent you from doing that by tying you to these predefined in advance specific aims. So that's one of the differences. Another difference is we're trying to make the MIRA program much more sustainable in terms of people's funding, so that we want the success rate for renewal to be higher for MIRA than for R01, so that you spend less time worrying about getting more grants and whether you're going to get refunded or not, and more time focusing on doing the best possible research.
Great. So one of the things that I want to mention is I got a question, will Dr. Lorsch's slides be available?
Yes, absolutely. Free to distribute them.
Okay, and what I also wanted to mention is that recordings of these talks and links to them will be posted pretty soon after to the meeting portal. And I wanted everybody to, I can't remember if we mentioned that, but that should be particularly useful. So that was a question from Tom Gridley. And he also asked another question. There's a lot of questions about COBREs, so I'm going to start passing some of those to you, John. So Tom asked, if you have a narrowly focused COBRE, should you try to broaden its scope when you submit a renewal?
I personally would think that would be of benefit, both to your potential renewal and also to your institution. So I would think yes, but discuss that, with your program director to make sure there's no pitfalls there in terms of getting too far out of scope or something like that.
Okay. Another COBRE question from Stephen Stanhope. Does the broadly focused COBRE concept include a collaborative COBRE concept that would leverage resources across 2 institutions?
So that's already possible. And I would encourage you to talk to Ming about how best to set that up, but there already are situations where that's true.
Okay. Another COBRE question from Catherine Ramsey. Why are COBREs becoming more restricted to funding projects at a home institute rather than an entire state?
So, okay, I think I understand what the question is going at. As I mentioned just the last question, it is certainly possible to have people from other institutions participating in your COBRE. I think the concern we have is that we want to make sure the COBREs are distributed within the state, and so that single institutions don't get all the COBREs. That would kind of go against the entire basis of the IDEA program and trying to build research capacity in the entire state. So we have put some restrictions in place just to make sure that one large institution in the state doesn't become sort of the sinkhole for all the COBREs, excluding other institutions in the state. So some of the restrictions are really designed to broaden the participation amongst institutions in the state in the COBRE program.
Okay, and there's one more COBRE question, and then we'll move on to some others because we have time to do that. This one is from Elizabeth Bonney. It says, what is the possibility of expanding an existing funded COBRE to include, parentheses, perhaps through revising existing support or getting additional support, close parentheses, areas such as health equity or diversity or community engagement?
Those are all great areas and some that we're very interested in. There are a number of opportunities that we have had and more that will probably be coming for supplements to the program. For instance, we had the Office of Women's Research, Office of Research on Women's Health had one, and additional ones may be coming. So stay tuned, talk to your program officers if there's specific things that you're interested in those areas. Again, those would be good areas for COBREs on their own as well. Minority health disparities would be a great one, for example.
That's great. That actually is one of the other questions from Elizabeth Jacobs. Is disparities related research in real world settings of interest to NIGMS? I think I heard the answer to be yes. What about
and yes,
training?
both through the IDEA program, definitely yes. And also there are other opportunities through our normal grant mechanisms to support research related to health disparities, minority health in certain areas and certain circumstances. So again, if you're interested, please contact an appropriate program director, and we'll try to figure out how that can be done.
Okay. And Elizabeth also asked specifically about training clinician researchers. Is that also part of that?
Yes, of great interest to us. Again, both through the IDEA program, but also NIGMS in general. So the Medical Sciences Training Program, MSTP, which is the major funder of MD PhD programs in the country, is our program, NIGMS's program. Love to see more applications from IDEA state institutions. this is an IDEA program, it's just an NIGMS program, but love to see more IDEA state medical schools applying for that, or health professional schools with doctoral degrees, clinical doctoral degrees. Within the IDEA program, one of the things we have come to realize, based on the work we've done this last year and a half, for instance, the active trials, is we have more work to do with the CTRs and above and beyond the CTRs in terms of building the capacity to do clinical research. And that could be clinician scientists, as you mentioned, but I think there's also a great need for things like nurse clinical trial coordinators. And so that's something we're looking closely at as well and would love feedback and input on.
Great. There are two questions from Dean Madden. I'll ask the first one.
Hi, Dean. It's been a long time. I haven't seen you in a long time.
Are there plans to permit established investigators to apply for MIRAs without prior NIGMS R01 funding? Is his first question.
Yes, so that's a good question. We are actually talking right now and hoping to broaden the eligibility criteria for MIRA. It would be, the next phase will probably be for what we call new investigators, which is someone who hasn't had a previous NIH major research grant like an R01. For people that previously have had R01s and either don't now or have an R01 from a different institute or center, that's still not something we would be opening up to in the near future. We have to figure out how best to do that without having sort of an avalanche of people who already have funding from other institutes or centers trying to apply for MIRA, which would subvert the goals of the program.
Okay, and Dean has also another question, which is, COBRE reviewers often criticize broad centers for lack of focus. Are there plans to clarify review criteria to support broader applications?
I think that's excellent feedback from Dean. I think that is something that we should work on internally to make sure that reviewers are clear that there's a difference between unfocused and broad, I think, right? And so we need to kind of help them understand that difference and what we're looking for. For instance, I mentioned data science, but you can think of other broad areas. Structural biology. There's a COBRE in structural biology at University of Oklahoma, which I think is great because it's quite a broad area and lots of different people can fit under that rubric, but it's still focused, right? It's not unfocused, maybe I should say.
Okay, great. Well, we've reached the end of the questions that have been posted. I have one question, and then I think we'll end this session or this Q&A. And several times during the talk, you said that that you want to hear from us, and there are requests for information and so forth. And I was wondering if you could comment a little more about sort of how that process works for contributing feedback and having a discussion about how these funding mechanisms are working and what would be good ideas that might be of interest to NIGMS.
It's a great question. So formally, we'll have things like the request for information that I mentioned. So keep your eyes out. Those come out through the guide, the NIH guide, which usually your Office of Sponsored Programs, is paying attention to, so they can let you know if one comes out. We try to make people aware of them through social media and through our feedback loop posts. So if you're not already signed up, and this goes for students all the way up through deans and university presidents, please sign up for our feedback loop post. We won't barrage you with email, maybe you'll get one every few weeks, but we try to provide a lot of important information in those feedback loop posts. And it's also a way that you can give feedback because you can make comments on the posts. So those are the more formal ways. We also have meetings like this so we can hear from you, and we're hearing right now some good feedback. But we also welcome you to send us your comments offline through emails. You can email me, you can email Ming, you can email any of the program directors. It can be very specific things like, this is a problem in the COBRE program, that is there any way to help address it? We can't think of every problem that's going to happen, so we rely on you to tell us unintended consequences and issues that we didn't think of. But really, we're happy to hear your comments, and we'll do what we can to try to use them to improve the programs.
All right, thank you. So, Bongsup.
Hello, everybody. It's my great pleasure to introduce our next special speaker, Dr. Ravi Basavappa, the program leader in the NIH's Office of Director Common Fund. Dr. Basavappa received his PhD in biophysics from the University of Chicago and conducted postdoctoral work at Harvard Medical School. He joined the NIH in 2004 as a program director for NIGMS Cell Biology and Biophysics Division. Later, he joined the Office of Strategic Coordination in 2010. And today, he's going to talk about the exciting grant mechanism called NIH Common Fund's High Risk, High Reward HRHR program. It's a very long name. On a quick programming note, Ravi will also join our 4 HRHR awardees in the Northeast idea states to discuss their successes and challenges in the breakout session starting today at 12:10. Welcome, Ravi.
Thank you very much, Bongsup, and thank you also, Brett, for allowing me the opportunity to speak today and talk about the NIH Common Fund High Risk, High Reward Research Program. But first, I'd like to give a brief overview of the Common Fund office, the office in which the HRHR program is situated. So what is the Common Fund? First of all, the Common Fund is intended to support programs that have very broad potential impact across the biomedical behavioral research community. So in a sense, it serves as a venture capital space at NIH in which we get to capitalize on emerging opportunities or try to overcome substantial technical hurdles that really impede scientific progress. But it also allows us to experiment in ways of supporting science itself. Most of the Common Fund programs have as a venture capital space, and most of the Common Fund programs have a defined limit of 5 to 10 years. And almost all of the Common Fund programs are very goal-driven. They have specific objectives that they hope to achieve by the end of their 5 to 10 project period. This Common Fund is managed by the Office of Strategic Coordination within the Division of Program Coordination, Planning, and Strategic Initiatives in the NIH Office of the Director. That's a lot. In partnership with the NIH institutes and centers. So we have about 28 current Common Fund programs, and they can be binned into different categories. For example, data tools and methods. One new exemplar in this category is the Program for Cellular Senescence Network, or CENNET. As you know, there are cells in the body that after a while they're functional, but they stop dividing, they're senescent. And these are fairly rare, but they can promote health, but they can also be deleterious to health. But how they do these things are really unknown. It's a big enigma, but could have a broad impact on a multitude of health and disease issues. So the objective of CENNET then is to do a comprehensive analysis and an atlas of senescent cells throughout the body. Another category of Common Fund programs is new types of clinical partnerships. An example of this then is the Undiagnosed Disease Network, UDN. And this is a partnership between the NIH Clinical Center, academic medical institutions across the country, and patients who have undiagnosed diseases. Although they have very debilitating diseases, they don't know exactly what the etiology is, what they are suffering from. And so it's the objective of this network to try to diagnose these diseases, and they have been quite successful in finding new diseases. The third category is new paradigms, 4D nucleome. 4DN is an example of that. And the objective of this is to determine the structure of the chromatin, the genetic component, the genetic material in a cell, in 3 dimensions, and also how it moves in time. So the 4th dimension, 4DN. And the 4th category is transformative workforce support. An example of this is the HRHR program. But I'm telling you about these programs because they may be very useful for your own research programs. We may have FOAs that are relevant to what you're doing in your own laboratory. Through these programs, you may be able to access high-end instrumentation, such as cryo-electron microscopes or mass spectrometers. You can also access databases, reagents, protocols. So I do recommend that you check out the Common Fund and see what programs there might be useful to you. But here we're to focus on the HRHR program. But before I talk in more detail about the HRHR program, I need to acknowledge the working group for the HRHR program at NIH. So the HRHR program is a large and complex program with many moving parts. To help us implement this program across NIH, we have this working group which has representation from almost all the institutes and centers at NIH, and it's the people on this working group then to make sure that to help develop the HRHR policies and make sure they are applied uniformly across NIH, and they are also instrumental in making funding recommendations. Okay, so the HRHR program consists of 4 initiatives: Pioneer Award, the New Innovator Award, the Transformative Research Award, and the Early Independence Award. The objective of these 4 initiatives together is to support high risk, that is usually highly innovative, high impact ideas. And since these are highly innovative ideas, no preliminary data or detailed experimental plans are required in the application. We really do mean that. We've been working very hard over the years to educate the reviewers to not expect the same level of details or data that they might expect in a standard R01. So it's quite common for people not to supply any data in their applications. So in a way, there are no specific scientific objectives for the HRHR program. In a way, this can be viewed as the investigator-initiated program in the Common Fund. That is, people are welcome to propose applications, any topic that's relevant to the broad mission of NIH. We don't specify any target areas of emphasis within the NIH mission. And so this means that any topic such as that relevant to behavioral, biomedical, social science, engineering, computational, basic, applied, clinical, all such topics are really welcome for the HRHR program. We encourage applications from all eligible applicants and from all eligible institutions. And that's something we're really trying to promote to raise the awareness of this program across all institutions across the US. So I'll go briefly through the 4 initiatives in chronological order, the order in which they were created. So I'll begin with the Pioneer Award program. This was started in 2004 when Dr. Zerhouni was still NIH director. The intention of this program, the Pioneer Award program, is to support individual scientists who have done really cool stuff in the past, who have a track record of doing highly innovative science and impactful science, and to, going forward, propose something that's really bold and if successful, would have a very broad impact. The Pioneer Award program is open to people at all career stages. That's really true. We've had beginning assistant professors get the award, as well as people who are much more senior, say National Academy members get the award. Although it is open to people at all career stages, in practice, it turns out that people who are fairly established tend to apply and tend to get the award. That is, people who are associate professor or more senior tend to apply and then get the award. The Pioneer Award is single PI applications only. That is because there's a great emphasis on the qualities of the investigator. In a way, the Pioneer Award can be considered more a person-based award than a project-based award. That's why it's called the Pioneer Award rather than Pioneering Research Award, for example, because it focuses on the investigator. And also, since it's called the Pioneer Award, that's meant to imply that what's being proposed really should be a new research direction, that the applicant should be blazing a new trail in science. It shouldn't be a natural extension of what he or she has been doing in the laboratory. It shouldn't be the next logical step or a scale up of what he or she has been doing. It should really be a pivot, a discontinuity in the trajectory of research. An unusual but important feature of the Pioneer Award program is that the awardees are expected to commit the major portion of research effort toward the Pioneer Award project. That is more than 51% of research effort. It's important to point out here that this is research effort only, so we don't include in this calculation effort toward teaching duties, clinical duties, or administrative duties, just the research. And this 51% research effort is true only for years 1, 2, and 3. But in years 4 and 5, we allow the Pioneer awardee to ramp down the research effort toward the Pioneer Award to 35% and 25% respectively. And this allows the Pioneer awardee to transition support of the Pioneer Award project to other sources of support. Because the Pioneer Award cannot be renewed. There's no type 2 application for a Pioneer Award. One can apply for a second Pioneer Award after the first one is completed, but you can't continue the same Pioneer Award. And so if you want to continue that line of research, you need to find other sources of support. And people have been successful in doing that. The awards are quite substantial, $700,000 in direct costs per year for 5 years, so people can go after pretty ambitious ideas. We wanted to make the Pioneer Award program very different from the standard R01 in all aspects, from application to review to administration. So for example, in the application, the major application component is a 5-page essay rather than the 12-page research strategy section. And in this 5-page essay, it's pretty much like a vision statement of what he or she hopes to accomplish in 5 years' time with that level of funding, and to have really a big impact on science. But within this essay, we do ask the applicants to address items of programmatic interest, so it is a structured component of the application. So we ask the applicants to address what is the problem or challenge or opportunity that you've identified, why is this really significant? Overall, what is the approach that you're planning to take? What is the record of innovativeness that you've had in the past? And why is what you're proposing really suited for a Pioneer Award initiative, for the Pioneer Award initiative, rather than standard R01? The review process is different. It has 2 phases. The first phase is electronic review of all the applications that are received in response to the FOA. There are 3 electronic reviewers per application. 2 of the 3 reviewers are chosen to have expertise in the very broad domain of what's being proposed, like neuroscience or immunology, behavioral social science research. There is no attempt to closely match the expertise of the reviewer to the topic of the application that they're seeing. The third of the 3 reviewers is somebody who has expertise well outside that domain. So the contention behind this approach is that if it's really pioneering, the exceptional innovation potential for broad impact should be easily apparent to people who are well outside the field. So when you're writing your application, this is true for all the 4 initiatives. When you're writing your application, please be sure that it is compelling to people who know something about the science being proposed, but also can be appreciated by people well outside the field for exceptional innovation potential for unusually broad impact. So the electronic reviewers give scores and brief comments. These are given to the second panel, the interview panel. And as its name implies, the interview panel consists of maybe 12 to 15 scientists who are known for their broad perspectives. They come from very different scientific backgrounds. Informed by the results from the first phase, the second panel chooses about 25 people or so that they think are the most pioneering in that bunch, and they're invited for interview in front of the entire panel. It's the second panel then that provides the individual scores from which the overall priority score for the application is calculated. So again, there's a very heavy focus on the qualities of the investigator. It's a person-based award, and because it is a person-based award, the awardees are given unusual flexibility. They can change research direction as they best see fit. So these are highly accomplished investigators. They propose something they're the best in the world to, or will give it their very best shot. But since it is risky research, it may not work out as planned. And these are the kind of people who will find something else very useful and impactful to do with the money. That's one way we mitigate the risk in this program, is to invest in the investigator. I should also acknowledge that the success rate is 4 to 5%. So it's pretty competitive, but it's 0% if you don't apply. As an example of Pioneer Award research is Dr. J. Krishna Ambati, who was at the time University of Kentucky. He studying age-related macular degeneration, and he made the startling observation that the innate immune response is actually involved in creating inflammation in the retina, leading to macular degeneration. There's an enzyme called CGAS, cyclic GMP-AMP synthase, that is usually involved in part of the pathway to recognize foreign DNA. But he recognized that somehow, he discovered that somehow this CGAS enzyme is really critical for especially the dry version of age-related macular degeneration. So it's bringing two disparate fields together was a quite cool thing that he did. The next program is the high-risk herbivore research program, is a new innovator award. It is in spirit very similar to the Pioneer Award in that it seeks to support individuals who have had track record of doing creative stuff in the past and who propose something bold going forward. In this case, however, it's restricted to early career stage investigators. This was started in 2007. By early, we use the NIH definition of early stage investigator, which is someone who has received his or her doctoral degree in the past 10 years or completed clinical training in the past 10 years and who has not yet received substantial NIH funding as a PI. Again, single PI applications only. The award level is also pretty high, $1.5 million for a 5-year project period. Here, the expected commitment is 25% research effort, and this allows these relatively junior investigators to seek other sources of support during the new innovator project period to help build up their research program. The overall format of the application is similar to that of the Pioneer Award, but here the essay is 10 pages. We give these younger folks more space to explain themselves. But again, we ask them, it's a structured essay. We ask them to address items of programmatic interest. We also use the 2-phase review process. In the first phase, electronic review all the applications that we receive. In this case, all 3 have domain expertise. And in the second phase, there's a panel, maybe 30, 35 people with very different scientific backgrounds who, informed by the results from the first phase, choose about 15 to 20% of the applications to discuss and score. We don't have interviews in this program like we do for the Pioneer Award initiative because we get so many more applications, we can't simply scale up and interview all the finalists, so to speak, for the New Innovator Award initiative. The success rate here is about 8 to 10%. As an example of the support supported by the research the New Innovator Award is Angela Panier from the University of Nebraska Lincoln, and she is looking at at delivering gene therapy components to adult stem cells. A particularly challenging thing to do in terms of gene delivery. Most people have focused on trying to make the delivery vehicles more efficient, but she looked on the other side, it's a very unusual perspective. She said, "Oh, maybe we can make the target cells more receptive to for transfection through these nanoparticles or viruses or whatever the case may be." And so her approach is to try to prime these adult stem cells to make them more receptive to transfection for these gene therapy components. And so she's taking a very different perspective in this important problem. In addition, she's planning to use or leverage her background in engineering and to model this entire system using queuing theory from telecommunications to provide computational insights into how this gene delivery network that includes priming of the cells might be working and how it might be optimized. The third of the four initiatives is the Transformative Research Award Initiative. This is also meant to support exceptionally innovative, unconventional research projects. This started in 2009. The two major differences between this initiative and the other three initiatives is that, unlike the other three, this is open to single PI applications as well as multi-PI applications, whatever really fits what's being proposed. The second major difference is that it's that the budgets are flexible. People can ask for whatever they think they really need to conduct the proposal. It should be commensurate with the scope of the project being proposed. It's open to individuals or teams at all career stages. There is no prior approval required for a large budget request. So if your budget is going to be more than $500,000 in direct costs, you don't need to get prior approval from NIH because the FOA indicates that such budgets are okay. This uses a three-phase review process. I won't go into the details here in the interest of time, but a very interesting experiment that we're conducting is that we're piloting anonymized review. So we are using a three-phase review system, and we're adapting what we've used before, but we call it the editorial board model. So we have an editorial board. They consist of maybe 12 to 15 scientists, again, with very different scientific backgrounds. And in the first phase, this year, in the FOA, we give instructions on how two components of the application must be anonymized. The specific aims component, the specific aims page, and the research strategy section must be anonymized according to the instructions that we give in the FOA. So in phase one, then, the editorial board members have access only to the anonymized specific aims page for each application. And then based on their evaluation of that single page, they identify a subset of applications that they think have the most transformative potential. And this subset of applications then goes to the second phase. So if you're writing a Transformative Research Award application, please be sure that you pay a lot of attention to crafting that specific aims page. The format it's called the specific aims page, but we use it in a very different way. We don't ask you to articulate 2 or 3 or 4 specific aims, but just to give a one-page distillation of why what you're proposing really is well aligned with the spirit of the Transformative Research Award Initiative. So the subset of applications that go to the second phase this year, the technical reviewers are people who have expertise in the topics of the applications that they are reviewing. And they will provide feedback on whether what's being proposed really is exceptionally innovative for the field, whether it does have the potential for unusually broad impact, or whether it's more incremental, more R01, more conservative, or maybe whether it's too wacky, even for this initiative. So this feedback is given to the editorial board. The editorial board, then informed by the comments from the technical reviews in the third phase, will identify a further subset to discuss and score. And it's only after the editorial board determines which applications it actually wants to discuss are those applications made available to them in full. It's only at very close to the end of the review process then that they'll actually know who the PIs are and what are the institutions from where they come. And at the panel meeting then, they will, by statute, they are required to review all 5 standard review criteria, including investigator and environment. And it's the editorial board members who provide the individual scores from which the overall party score is calculated. This is the second year of this anonymized review pilot. This past year was the first year, and the results are quite encouraging. surveying the applicants, many of them applied because they were aware of this anonymized review nature of the application, and they said of the review, and they said they may not have applied otherwise. They also said that they were able to write their application still in a compelling manner, although it had to be anonymized. The reviewers, when they were surveyed, they indicated that despite the limited information, relatively limited information in the specific aims page and the research strategy sections, they were still able to evaluate the transformative potential of what was being proposed to their satisfaction. And the results of the awards will be out in late October, but I think the results are quite encouraging. An example of transformative research award supported research is Augusto Ochoa from Louisiana State University Health Science Center, and he's of course he's a cancer specialist, but he was looking at the interplay between cancer and the immune system, and in particular trying to determine how the cancer microenvironment, it's really quite insidious, very pernicious in that it's subverting the usual immune program and making the and using the immune system to its own ends in the cancer microenvironment. The fourth of the initiatives is the Early Independence Award. This was started in 2011. One way to frame this is that it's meant to support people who wish to skip the traditional postdoc. They're just finishing their PhD or clinical training, and they have what it takes to really launch into an independent research career. That may be as a regular faculty position or maybe some other special position that the university has, but it's totally independent research position. It's single PI applications only. It's at the time of application, the applicant must be non-independent at the time of application. We give guidance in the FOA and what we mean by this. 80% of the independent research effort should be, for all 5 years, 80% of the effort must be toward independent research. And in the first 2 years of the award, this must be 80% supported by the Early Independence Award. The awards are up to $250,000 per year for 5 years, so this is a full modular R01. And there's a limit of 2 applications per institution. We have this limit because we want to make sure, these are relatively young people who are launching their independent research careers. So we want to make sure that the institution is aware of them, has vetted them internally to make sure that they're appropriate, and also importantly, that the institution will be providing the appropriate infrastructure and resources to give them a nurturing environment while allowing them to be totally independent. An example of Early Independence Award supported research is that of Brandon Dukoski, who's at the University of Kansas. And he is tackling a really tough problem, Epstein-Barr virus. It affects 90% of the people in the world. It can lead to infectious mononucleosis, as well as some cancers. There's no vaccine. So he's developed much of the innovation that for his award is technical innovation, trying to come up with new relatively high throughput ways of immunoprofiling people who've been infected with Epstein-Barr virus in terms of being able to assay what are the major features of the adaptive immune system, the T cell response, the B cell response, and compare these across people who've had severe consequences due to Epstein-Barr virus with people who are essentially non-symptomatic to find out what the correlates are and how this might be then exploited to develop vaccines for Epstein-Barr virus. And in principle, this serves as a paradigm and may be applicable to other viruses as well. A cool feature for the Early Independence Award program is that we have an annual research symposium. I call it the Lollapalooza of scientific symposia. But the next one is scheduled for June 8th through the 10th in Bethesda. We do have a lot of information on our website, so if you're interested, please do check us out. Or if you go to commonfund.nih.gov, you'll see links to our various initiatives. FOAs typically are published in April or May. Receipt dates typically are in August, September. These are coming up pretty soon for this year, so you may not be able to submit one this year, but we do anticipate being able to publish FOAs next year. And again, I'd like to underscore that applications are sought which reflect the full diversity of the research workforce. Individuals from diverse backgrounds are encouraged to apply, and we welcome applications on all topics relevant to the broad mission of NIH. If you have questions and you want to contact us, these are the email addresses, but you can also find these through our website. I think time is up.
All right, thank you so much, Ravi. We were excited to add your talk and the panel discussion with 4 recipients to our program, because
Terrific.
part of this is are things that grant mechanisms that people haven't necessarily heard of, and one of the things that was striking to me when I learned about this was just how different this mechanism is. And so
Right.
I have a couple of questions that I'll take the liberty to ask you right now, sort of because there are a few things that I think jump out for those of us who haven't applied for these sort of awards that I really just want to ask. So, the one of the things that is always striking when an RFA comes and says you don't need preliminary data, the answer is, but you kind of need preliminary data. And you made an effort to say no, that's not where we are here. So I want to take the opportunity to ask, really?
Really? So that is true. Okay, in practice, most people provide some data to give a glimmer of hope that whatever is being proposed can actually be achieved. And those data will be evaluated, but it actually can be counterproductive if you supply too much data. Then I've seen this, the reviewers will say, oh, everything looks feasible. It's better suited for an R01 than this initiative. But there have been cases where people have provided 0 data and still received the award. So a little bit, is fine. Too much may not be a good thing for this program.
Right. So as a follow-up question, well, how does one determine the balance of that? I realize it'll be different depending on the investigator. But the thing you said, well, this is more appropriate for an R01, or feels like more like an R01 sort of application. And we'll explore this a little bit, I think, in the panel discussion, which I think will be really useful with our 4 recent awardees. But can you sort of comment a little more on sort of that, right? This I guess what I'm getting at here is this program feels very, very different. In many ways.
Good.
And I think what a lot of the people listening might wonder is, how do you determine whether your research is appropriate or your idea is appropriate for this? And how do you sort that out? And I'm wondering if you can comment on that.
Well, to give your question about preliminary data, how do you know it's too much, is that, for an R01, you have 2, 3, or 4 specific games and it have pretty compelling data. Feasibility data for each one of those aims. That's not the case at all for these initiatives. You really don't need that much data, and I think the panelists today can attest to that. You might have some data to show that some part of it, at least, is potentially plausible, achievable. And to your second point about, well, how do you know whether what you're thinking about really is suited for this program? The best way is to email us at these email addresses, and we're happy to discuss the scope of what you're thinking and how well it might be aligned to the spirit of the initiative.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ravi. We really appreciate this. So we're sort of at the end of the questions in chat, but I'll just mention again that at 12:10 we have a panel discussion with you and with 4 Northeast recent IE5 last 5 years awardees from the Northeast. And I look forward to that conversation.
Great. So do I. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Well, Ravi, thank you so much for the very informative talk. And we have a couple of minutes. I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
And in one of those slides that you mentioned, that this is for a single PI only, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not PI. I can understand why that's the case, but do you want to comment on the background, not allowing MPI as a mechanism?
Right. So the exception to this is the Transformative Research Award, where we allow MPIs, but the other three are more person-focused awards. Mm-hmm. So more stringent than that. Not only is it single PI for the Pioneer Award and New Innovator Award, not only is it single PI only, but we allow the biosketch of only the PI, of no other key personnel, no letters of support. It's all about the PI and his or her vision of what he or she hopes to accomplish.
I see. As I was listening to your talk at the beginning, it's almost like this is an expanded version of R21, right? And is there some truth to it?
The R21 is much more limited in scope.
Right.
Right, 2 years, much lower funding level, award level. But yeah, this is.
But the concept is similar in a sense that you don't need preliminary data. It has to be innovative, great ideas, things like that, right?
If I may say so, the R21s actually have the reputation of requiring preliminary data, even though they say they don't. But here we try to make sure that that's really the case.
Okay. Well, thank you. And so we'll be back for Dr. Graham's keynote session at 11:05. See you soon.